The air in Blackthorn Hollow carried the weight of autumn, thick with the scent of damp leaves and the faint metallic tang of the Kanawha River. Tucked in the folds of West Virginia's Appalachian Mountains, the town was a forgotten speck, its population barely cresting 800. Main Street was a single strip of cracked asphalt lined with a diner, a general store, and a church with a sagging steeple. Beyond it, dense forests of oak and pine stretched toward the horizon, their shadows swallowing the light long before dusk. It was September 1983, and the days were growing shorter, the nights colder, as if the hollow itself was bracing for something. Clara Hensley, a 29-year-old librarian from Charleston, had come to Blackthorn Hollow to escape. She'd left behind a failed engagement and a job that felt like a slow suffocation, seeking refuge in the town's small library, a squat brick building donated by a coal baron decades ago. Clara was practical, her brown hair always pulled into a neat bun, her glasses slightly too large for her sharp features. She'd grown up in the mountains, raised on stories of haints and curses, but she'd always dismissed them as folklore, the kind of tales old women told over coffee. Yet, as she settled into her new life, she couldn't shake the feeling that Blackthorn Hollow was watching her. The library was quiet, its shelves lined with dusty books and yellowed newspapers. Clara spent her days cataloguing, her only company the occasional patron, mostly elderly folks or children sneaking in to read comics. The townspeople were polite but distant, their smiles tight, their eyes darting away when she asked about the Hollow's history. Not much to tell, they'd say, their voices clipped. Just a quiet place. It was the children who first mentioned the whispers. On a rainy afternoon, 2 boys, no older than 10, lingered by the library's window, their sneakers squeaking on the linoleum. "You ever hear it, Miss Hensley?" one asked, his freckled face pale. "The voice in the woods." Clara smiled, assuming it was a local legend. "What voice?" The boys exchanged a glance. "Out by the old mine," the second boy said, his voice barely above a whisper. "At night, it calls your name. My pa says it's the Hollow talking." Clara laughed softly, but the boys didn't smile. They left soon after, their heads bowed against the rain. That night, as she locked up the library, the wind carried a sound, a low, keening wail that seemed to come from the forest beyond the town. She told herself it was just the storm, but her hands trembled as she fumbled with her keys. Blackthorn Hollow had a history, though no one spoke of it openly. Clara found fragments in the library's archives, newspaper clippings from the 1920s about a coal mine collapse that killed 17 men. Their bodies never recovered. The mine, located a mile outside town, was abandoned, its entrance boarded up and overgrown with brambles. Locals avoided it, calling it the Hollow's Mouth. There were other stories too. Hikers who'd vanished in the woods, their gear found untouched. A preacher in the 50s who claimed the devil lived in the trees. Clara dismissed these as exaggerations, but the unease lingered like a splinter under her skin. Her only friend in town was Ruth Carver, a 60-year-old widow who ran the diner. Ruth was wiry, her hands calloused from years of work, her grey eyes sharp with a quiet strength. Over coffee one evening, Clara mentioned the boy's story. Ruth's face tightened, her spoon pausing mid-stir. "Kids talk nonsense," she said, but her voice was too quick, too sharp. "Don't go poking around the mine, Clara. Ain't nothing there but trouble." "Why does everyone avoid it?" Clara asked, leaning forward. "What happened out there?" Ruth hesitated, her gaze flickering to the window. "Folks say the mine took more than lives. took something from the land itself, made it hungry. She laughed, but it was forced. Just stories, mind you. Pay 'em no heed. Clara nodded, but Ruth's words stuck with her. That night, she dreamed of a dark tunnel, its walls slick with water, and a voice calling her name, soft, insistent, like a mother coaxing a child. She woke with a start, her sheets damp with sweat. The clock read 3:17 a.m., and outside the wind howled through the trees. The next week, a stranger came to the library. He was in his 40s, tall and gaunt, with a weathered face and eyes that seemed to carry too much weight. He introduced himself as Daniel Pruitt, a journalist from Pittsburgh researching Appalachian folklore. His voice was low, measured, but there was an urgency to his questions. "I'm looking for records on the Blackthorn mine collapse," he said, leaning against the counter. "Anything from the 20s, or later accounts of strange happenings." Clara hesitated. The library's archives were disorganized, but she'd seen enough to know the mine was a sensitive topic. "Why the interest?" she asked, adjusting her glasses. Daniel's smile was thin. "I'm writing a book on unsolved mysteries. Blackthorn's got a reputation. Disappearances, odd lights in the woods, voices. People on the outside talk about it, even if folks here don't." She showed him the archives, pulling out brittle clippings and a faded ledger from the mining company. As they worked, Daniel shared what he'd learned. The 1923 collapse wasn't just a tragedy, but a mystery. No explosion, no cave-in, just a sudden silence from the miners. Rescuers found tools scattered, lanterns still burning, but no bodies. Some claimed the miners had been taken by something in the earth. Daniel's voice dropped as he read a quote from a survivor who'd quit the day before. "The mine whispered to us, told us to leave. I listened. They didn't." Clara felt a chill, but she kept her tone light. "Sounds like ghost stories to scare kids." "Maybe," Daniel said, his eyes meeting hers. "But I've talked to people, hunters, hikers, who've heard things out there. Names called in the dark. One man swore he saw his own shadow move without him." She laughed, but it was hollow. That night, she couldn't sleep. The dream returned, stronger this time. The tunnel, the voice, and now a faint light flickering at its end. When she woke, her window was open, the curtains fluttering. She was certain she'd locked it. Daniel became a regular at the library, his presence both a comfort and a disturbance. He was methodical, poring over records with a focus that bordered on obsession. Clara found herself drawn to him, not romantically, but out of a shared curiosity. Together, they pieced together a timeline. The collapse in 1923, a missing hiker in 1947, a teenager who vanished in 1965 after sneaking to the mine on a dare. Each incident was accompanied by reports of whispers or lights, dismissed as hallucinations or pranks. One evening, as they closed the library, Daniel suggested visiting the mine. "Just to see it," he said, his voice casual but his eyes intense. "Could help us understand." Clara hesitated. Ruth's warning echoed in her mind, but so did the voice from her dreams. "Okay," she said finally, "but we go in daylight." The next morning, a Saturday, they drove to the edge of town in Daniel's rusted pickup. The forest was dense, the air heavy with the scent of pine and decay. The mine's entrance was hidden behind a tangle of blackthorn bushes, their thorns sharp as needles. A weathered sign read, "Keep out, danger." But the boards sealing the entrance were splintered, as if someone had pried them loose. Clara's stomach twisted as they approached. The air felt wrong, too still, like the forest was holding its breath. Daniel carried a flashlight and a notebook, his face set with determination. "We're just looking," he said, as if reassuring himself. They ducked under the boards, the darkness swallowing them. Inside, the mine was cold, the walls slick with moisture. The flashlight beam revealed rusted tracks and scattered tools, relics of a life abandoned. The air smelled of earth and something sharper, like burnt metal. Clara's boots echoed on the stone floor, each step amplifying her unease. "This was a bad idea," she whispered. Daniel didn't answer. He was staring at the tunnel ahead, where the tracks disappeared into shadow. "Did you hear that?" he asked, his voice low. Clara froze. She hadn't heard anything, but now she did. A faint murmur, like a voice muffled by water. It was indistinct, but it carried her name. "Clara," it whispered, soft and pleading. She grabbed Daniel's arm. "We need to go." He shook his head, his eyes fixed on the darkness. "It's just the wind. Come on." He stepped forward, the flashlight beam trembling in his hand. Against her better judgment, she followed. The tunnel narrowed, the walls pressing closer. The murmur grew louder, now a chorus of whispers, overlapping, unintelligible. Clara's heart pounded, her breath shallow. She wanted to run, but her legs felt heavy, as if the ground itself was pulling her deeper. They reached a chamber where the tracks ended. The air was thick, the smell of burnt metal overpowering. The flashlight caught glints of quartz in the walls, sparkling like eyes. In the center of the chamber was a pile of stones, arranged in a crude circle. At its heart was a single lantern, its glass cracked, its wick black with soot. "That shouldn't be here," Daniel said, his voice shaking. "This mine's been sealed for decades." Clara's mouth was dry. "We need to leave, now." Before Daniel could respond, the whispers surged, a cacophony of voices calling their names. Clara, Daniel, Clara, Daniel. The lantern flickered to life, its flame weak but impossibly bright in the dark. Clara screamed, grabbing Daniel's hand. They ran, the whispers chasing them, the tunnel seeming to twist and stretch. The flashlight died, plunging them into darkness, but the lantern's glow followed, casting long, distorted shadows on the walls. They stumbled out of the mine, collapsing in the sunlight. Clara's chest heaved, her hands scraped from gripping the rocks. Daniel was pale, his notebook lost somewhere in the tunnel. "What was that?" he gasped. Clara couldn't answer. The whispers were gone, but the forest felt alive, the trees leaning closer, their branches like fingers. They drove back to town in silence. The lantern's glow burned into Clara's mind. That night she locked every door and window, but sleep wouldn't come. She heard it again, the whisper, her name, coming from outside. She didn't look. She didn't dare. Daniel left Blackthorn Hollow the next day, his book abandoned. He didn't say goodbye, but Clara found a note slipped under the library door. "Don't go back. It knows you now." She burned it, the flames reminding her of the lantern. The town grew quieter. The children stopped coming to the library, and Ruth avoided her eyes at the diner. Clara tried to resume her routine, but the hollow felt different, its air heavier, its shadows deeper. She stopped sleeping, her dreams filled with the tunnel, the lantern, and a voice that wasn't her own. In October, a hiker went missing near the mine. The search party found nothing but a backpack, its straps tangled in blackthorn bushes. Clara overheard the sheriff talking at the diner. Same as always, no tracks, no signs, like the hollow swallowed him. She quit her job the next day and packed her bags. As she drove out of Blackthorn Hollow, the forest seemed to watch, its trees silent but alive. In her rearview mirror, She swore she saw a faint yellow glow flickering at the edge of the woods. Clara never returned to Blackthorn Hollow. She settled in Ohio, far from the mountains, but the whispers followed. Not every night, but often enough. Her name, soft and pleading, carried on the wind. She never answered. She knew what would happen if she did.